So just to recap on the talking points for this evening. So the first one is, can I make better breeding decisions for my cows and for my business? Which cows do I ideally want my replacement heifers from? And lastly, to dairy or to beef, should all my cows be getting a dairy straw? So just so we're all on the same page, I will be talking about the Balanced Performance Index, which is Australia's national selection index, and it's very handy to rank animals. So on average, if an animal's got a BPI of 300, you'd expect that she contributes $300 more income over a feed and herd cost than the average, which is 0. So independent work has shown that regardless of your farming system, a daughter of a high BPI sires produces more milk solids than daughters from low BPI sires. And so just a little predicament, let me introduce you to Ruby. She's my nice little Jersey calf from my stud cow that won at Dairy Week. Now she's born, and I'm just going to throw it to the crowd, whack some comments in the thing, or unmute yourself. I'm not sure if you can do that. But what are some ways that I can predict the future performance of my calf?
So this is where the chat function would be the way to go. If you want to just throw your 2 bobs worth in, just on that, through that bubble function at the top of the screen, and type away to your heart's content. Cuteness is one of our first responses, and I think you absolutely, if cuteness was a measure,
Yeah, I reckon that's a great way. That's how I usually do my performance measures. No, I can't see the chat, so if someone can read out the responses, that'll be great.
Cuteness, we've discussed it. Vigor. Not sure, what else we got? EBVs, another person has recommended. You might break that down for us as well. Genomic results. How good the parents were, what a mum and dad were like. A couple of people on the same theme there. That's the dam's performance. So we're getting into some sort of some genealogy vibes there.
Yep.
Dairy form, genomic testing. Wait for a first herd test. Someone's trying to drum up business for Heiko, I think. So there's a few. We're perhaps, you've got a few to play with there, Beth.
Yeah, that sounds great. So previously, prior to genomic selection, probably one of the most accurate ways to know this heifer's future performance is a parent average breeding value. So this is just the average, and someone mentioned it earlier, this is just the average difference in breeding value between both parents. So if we've got the dam's BPI plus the sire's BPI divided by 2, it's the parent average of the calf. So say in this case, my dam's BPI was 50 plus 330, which is the sire's BPI divided by 2, and I get an approximate breeding value of 190. Now, this isn't the most accurate way to do it because of we can now use genomic selection. So I can take a DNA sample that is then sent to the lab and compared to a group of animals that have high quality data from a range of different herds and find out that my calf is actually likely to be less than a parent average, but I get the value for a BPI of $140, and I also get information of the performance of 46 other traits. So previously, we sort of only knew this amount of information to the 7th lactation, but now I can DNA test my calf as soon as she enters the shed and know when she leaves the shed that what's the likely performance of that animal. So genomic selection was developed in Victoria, and it provides us a really great opportunity to know the reliability early in an animal's life. If you're not genotyping your animal, every lactation that animal performs, and you've got a registered sire sort of assigned to the animal, a date of birth, the reliability will increase over time until you sort of get to that 70% reliability for protein. But one of the most exciting things about genomic selection is this ability to predict fertility. And so I thought What better way to give examples than getting some real farm data? So Heiko have provided me with some data from the region. I don't know the farm, but I do know it's a Heiko farmer. This is a current cow list of their diff 202 file for people that know their diff files, but this is just the cow breeding value file that you can export from Maestro. Predominantly Holstein cows have had breeding values, so that's what I'm presenting today, and some of these animals are genomically tested. And I'm very grateful that Heiko provided the data for this. I don't know the farmer, and they may or may not be in the audience today, so please keep that in mind when you're asking questions and making comments. Here, this isn't actually a photo of his 2020 heifers, but from his 2020 heifers, there was a range of breeding values that we were seeing. Now, we know that within a group of animals, there is going to be some variation, but what we found was that his worst heifer in his 2020 group had a BPI of 79, whilst his best had a 408 BPI. So that's a difference of sort of 329 BPI points just between his best and his worst animal. Now we know that, and most of the animals sort of sat around that 230 to sort of 330 mark. But there's considerable variation between your heifer groups. So another thing to sort of consider is what do I do with information on this variation? And this variation of sort of that 300 BPI units is what we're seeing in the Dairy Australia Heifer Genomics project. So it's not just isolated to this farm, it's pretty consistent across the board. So just a little bit more of a breakdown on the herd profile of BPI. Here we've got the 2014, so these are cows born in 2014, which makes them 7 now. And we're seeing sort of a similar range of that 300 BPI unit difference, where sort of the worst cow here is sort of got a minus 100 BPI and the best cow just over that positive 200. But yeah, so we're seeing large differences across the board over multiple years between these groups. But what we also see is that our younger animals have got on average higher BPIs than our older ones. And so can we use this information to make different decisions around what breeding decisions we're making on farm during this next joining period? If BPI isn't really a thing, we're also seeing a similar level of variation in the fertility breeding value. So this is across the herd in this one. So we've got a fertility breeding value of the cow of 93, ranging right through to 119. That's a huge variation in the fertility breeding value, where majority of cows in this herd are sitting around that sort of 103, 105 area. So just again, like we're really seeing large differences. In 2014, this farm had a mean fertility of 103, but the worst cow had a fertility breeding value of 92, well below the average of 100. But the best cow in this age group is 118. Now, we wouldn't know what these fertility breeding values were if we hadn't genomically tested until they were in their 7th or 8th lactation. But over time, this farm has been able to increase their mean fertility breeding value from 103 to 106 in the last 6 to 7 years, which is an awesome achievement. So this, within that year group, if you had a 6-week in calf rate of around 50% for those 2014 animals, that's about an 8% increase based on recent data coming out of the research group I'm in. So looking back on what I've just sort of covered, which cows do I really want my replacement heifers from? And do I want replacement heifers from all cows in my herd? And so here, this is all the cows in the herd grouped based on their BPI. So we've got cows on the left here. There's sort of 5 cows with BPIs between, like, with comfortably negative 100. And then we've sort of got the majority of cows around that 170 to 190 or above. And so can I make different breeding decisions depending on where these animals fit in the scale? So do I actually want a replacement heifer from a cow with a breeding value of minus 90 BPI? Because if you take the parent average of if you used a sire, you spent $30 on a bull, and that sire's got a BPI of 500, the parent average of that calf is still going to be considerably less than if you were to use the same bull over a higher genetic merit animal. So can we be more strategic in the value of semen, or the type of semen that we're putting in our animals, to value add their calves? On the flip side of that, we've got these elite animals, which are predominantly our young heifers. Maiden heifers are more likely to conceive to fixed time AI programs and sex semens. So should we be looking at doing a fixed time AI program with sex semen on our maiden heifers? These decisions will vary from business to business. There's no set amount of, 50% of your cows should be done to sex semen or anything. It's really business dependent, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. But can we make better decisions from the information that we know about these breeding values? Because we know raising excess heifers might seem like a risk mitigation, but it's actually costing you guys, costing farmers, a lot of money. So an animal doesn't start paying off its rearing cost until it's had its first calf. And so the cost of rearing, well, from the cost of birth to the cost of rearing, this animal is causing you a loss between $1,200 and $1,700 in its first 2 years of life. And what if we knew that that animal was never going to turn you a profit? It'll vary on when these animals will turn you a profit, but it's most likely in their second lactation. So if you know that over time and over lactations, which animals are your more profitable, are more likely to return you a profit, can we be trying to produce more of these animals and make sort of different decisions for the ones that we don't necessarily want to keep those calves? So one option for different decisions is to use contracted calf rearing with beef semen. It's a bit of a up in the air if you've got an export heifer market. There's a few things to sort of really consider. Like there's an insane price for large for heifers at the moment. I think in Mafra the other day there was people driving around and offering $800 for a 5-day-old Holstein calf. But it is a high risk market, and only heifers have the higher price. So if you're using conventional semen and you're getting sort of $800 for a 5-day-old calf, you've also got to sort of take the average to the bull which has got no value. The other option is you can, join your tail into beef, really sort of target that beef market. There's a lot of contracted calf rearing going around. It's a lower risk. The margins might not be as great as what you can get on the export market, but it is providing a different pathway for bobby calves, and heifers and bulls are both worth a similar value. So you're not having to sort of get rid of the bobby calf there. So that provides a great opportunity sort of to diversify your business. So just a couple of key messages. There's large differences between your best and worst animals. Within a year, you'd expect sort of around 300 BPI units. Providing you've been using high genetic merit bulls and consistently using higher genetic merit bulls over the years, your younger animals will have higher genetic merit, and therefore could be targeted for sort of a sex semen strategy. These provide opportunities to fast track your genetic progress. And that's my presentation done, if anyone has any questions.